Welcome to the Firehouse. I'm your host, Captain Kyle Smith. You're responding down the road less traveled en route to financial freedom. If you're a first responder, then planning your future through financial literacy is a minimum requirement. This isn't financial advice, just a conversation to get your wheels turning. Ready? Good, because you're at sea. What's up, everyone? It's Captain Kyle Smith, and this week I sat down for a morning meeting with Rich and Rachel Vigil. Listen in as they share their 5-year plan to have real estate help pay for their kids' college expenses. By starting with the end in mind, they're able to execute on their plan. I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, hey, Rachel and Rich, welcome to the bullpen. Thanks for meeting me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to get you guys on here. We always hear a lot about Rich's investing journey in our fire department, and so I'm just happy to have you guys here just so we can share it with a broader audience. But before we get into your first alarm, and we discuss the details of all that stuff, how has COVID sort of affected things in the Vigil household?
Well, in the Vigil household versus the Vigil investment, it's been two completely different things. I think because of our employment status, it hasn't financially affected the household. It's actually brought the family more together. My 8-year-old son and 10-year-old daughter are closer than they ever been. They're basically best friends now. And, I come home, they're both home, and it's been a blessing, really, I think, family-wise. I don't know where we would ever have found this volume of time to spend with each other.
And we're going to turn it into some road schooling in May to the end of the year. So we're just going to take our trailer and continue with virtual school and hit the road.
Yeah, we're thinking potentially May 10th through July 17th, we're going to be traveling the country.
Yep. So if anyone wants to rob our house, that's when we're going to be gone. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. That sounds so great. And it's like, it's silver lining, none of us asked for this. None of us wanted this, but in a lot of ways, there have been these great little things where, and I hear this so frequently on the morning meeting, where it's people just either reconnecting with their loved ones or family members or whatever, where you're forced to be around each other. So you got to make it work. And I think that message is really important to kids. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job raising yours where they are best friends. I mean, that for me is just priceless. That's cool. I'm happy to hear that. Well, you guys ready to get in your first alarm?
Let's do it.
Sure.
All right, cool. So as you guys will well know, a first alarm assignment in the San Diego Fire Department consists of 4 engines and a truck. But here at the Firehouse, I'll ask you 4 questions. You give us 1 piece of advice. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, here we go. So you're going to be first in on your first alarm. And when you're first in, you got to give a size up. And that's who you guys both are, where you work, and how long you've been doing it.
All right. Snapshot for me is Rich Vigil, 45 years old, San Diego Fire Department. At one of our training stations in the Miramar area of the city of San Diego, Station 44. And fire-wise, that's my story.
Perfect.
What about you?
Rachel Vigil, younger than Rich. We don't need to say my exact age, just younger. And let's see, originally from Oregon, moved to San Diego to meet my husband, which I did. He happened to be in the fire department, which was cool. That was a bonus. And let's see, been doing marketing for about 20 years already, which is insane. Raising 2 little ones. And right now I have probably the coolest job because I get to find products to go into vacation rentals around the United States. So I go after brands and then they put their product and give it to hosts for free. So it's perfect because with our short rental on the side, and then my full-time work, it's just a good combo.
Oh, that's awesome. And for anybody that's watching this, guys, you will know right away, Rachel is certainly the fairer half and the younger half in this partnership. So, but getting into your first alarm a little further here, you guys, and I happen to know the story, but for everybody else, these guys have leveraged their skills. They've leveraged their abilities to make something really cool go. And you just heard Rachel touch on it a little bit. But guys, when you first met, Rachel, you came down from Oregon. Did you guys have any investing experience other than, some basic things?
I did what you're told to do, just save and put money in a 401k and just save everything you can. I find investing super boring. So I just kind of do what I'm told, unless it has to do with property. And then I get really involved. So that's when it got exciting a couple years ago. But No, I mean, that's what the experts are for. So I just kind of follow their lead.
Yeah, no, that's
And
important though, right? That's important. If there are experts, if you have somebody in your network that knows how to do these things, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can keep it simple, right? The keep it simple principle. And I actually had the Kennedys on the morning meeting recently, and I'll link their show here above. They were saying the same exact thing, just to keep it super simple, and that's what a lot of this is about. What about you, Rich?
I think there's an important takeaway from my story is my upbringing was just work hard. It really didn't talk too much about saving money. And so when I got into the fire service, that's where they started talking about putting money into your deferred comp, put money into your 401k, and get your house paid off and be debt free when you retire. So I think one of the big things that helped us get into a position where we're at now was initially that's how I started. And then through some advice from our financial advisor, he saw the equity that we had in our home. We were 5 years into a 15-year mortgage up here in Temecula. And touching that equity was the last thing on my mind. And over multiple conversations, he convinced me to pull that equity out, leverage it, go back into a 30-year fixed loan, which was the opposite of anything I was ever trained to do in the fire service. And it was painful to do, but it was the best decision we ever made. And now 3 years into switching up our program, because like I said, at the time I was 12 years from retirement and 5 years into a 15-year mortgage, and I was going to be debt free. And we've refinanced it twice since then. I know we'll get more into the short-term rental purchase later, but we got into the short-term rental, which has been fruitful, and we've refinanced that already once. And moving on to the next generation of advice, not putting every penny away for the future, but using that penny to leverage the future has been the change in our recent design.
And having full control of where you put it. If it goes into a college account, that's all you can use it on. At least we have control of our money. And that was a huge part for us.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you took that money and you put it in a 529 account, for example, yeah, it has to be dedicated or earmarked for a qualified educational expense, or you pay a 10% penalty. And the great thing about that refi, it feels like cheating. You're using, it's like getting money out of thin air in a way. And it's like this amazing thing when you can use leverage and use dollars in today's world and pay for something in 30 years time. I mean, it really is one of the most powerful ways to invest that I've ever heard of. Now, but with that in mind, how did you guys kind of come to consensus, or how did you guys get on the same page? And if it's admittedly that you didn't have a huge investing background, what sort of conversations did you guys have to have so that you could get on the same page?
Oh, I'll take this one.
Go for it.
So for quite a while, I kept telling Rich, let's get a property. Let's get something in the mountains. I want to be around trees, kind of remind me of home. And absolutely not. We are not that family that can afford a second home. No way. That's always pushed back. So I owe a lot to another fire family who had already invested in that area. And once he spoke to that family, he was all about it, said hands down, do it. So I think it just takes advice from not only your wife, but from those around you to make sure, just have input from somebody that already did it and they were successful. And then talking to our financial guy, and he just put all the numbers together to make it happen.
So I think it was twofold. I didn't want to be a landlord. I didn't want to deal with a rental and then having to take time off work to, on the UL off of work, which is honest, like, nope, I got to leave right now to go. There's something happening at the rental. Plus, where were we going to get the money? Because we were planning for being debt-free when we retired, not leveraging equity. And my life insurance was coming up. And so our financial advisor, he's up in, at the time he wasn't our financial advisor. He was the individual we purchased our term insurance plan from. And he's up in Oregon. So I called him and said, hey, I need another term. And he wouldn't give me another term until he looked at our world. When he looked at my world with the retirement, with the 401k, with her 401k, with the equity, that's when he started talking to us about considering leveraging. And so he probably, I'd say a solid 40 hours over several months that he put into me. And my cynical question was, what are you going to get out of this time you're spending with me? But he was building a relationship with me. And he convinced me, and I asked him to try to do it. I challenged him. I'd like to see you convince me to touch that equity. And he did. So what I did was I pulled the equity out of the house and we sat on it. And I went and I ended up working with Alex Kane. And I knew he had a place. I knew Rachel wanted a place. I knew we had some money that we were going to do something with. And now what was happening was everywhere I turned, there was a door opening with a potential investment opportunity. And now I had the ability to make a decision. And so when I talked to Alex Kane, knowing what Rachel wanted in life, the two roads came together. And so in that first day that he and I spent together, I called Rachel and said, let's do it. And so I'll do another name drop. Paul Lotz, he likes to call me fire, maybe aim. And I call him aim, maybe fire. So one thing that's important, I think, about the fire service is we get just enough information to make a decision. And usually those decisions are good. And there's a lot of other people who want all the information before they make that decision. And there's nothing wrong with that either, but sometimes you miss opportunity. And so for us, I had enough information to know that the decision was we were going to pull the equity, and we also had a fallback. I think the big difference is whether somebody had equity or not, we went from that 15-year mortgage to a 30 and lowered rate. So we were able to lower our mortgage while pulling the equity, where I think a lot of folks out there that have equity, they may end up with a higher mortgage, and that might be a deal breaker for them. So for us, it was a win-win. And
no, that's awesome. And what I'm hearing coming through a lot is like a mindset shift. It was, hey, we are not that family that can afford a second home. We can't afford a rental property. And that it sort of shifted after talking to people in your network, your financial advisor, people like Alex Kane, Paul Lotz, who I've had both of those guys on the morning meeting. I'll link to their shows as well. Where, this stuff has already been done. People with fewer resources. And this is the way I think of it. And I was talking again to the Kennedys about this recently. This is the way I think about it. This has already been done. People that are not as smart as me, with fewer resources with me, with less of people backing me, have already done this and done this well. And so when I can wrap my head around it and stop saying I can't afford it and start saying things like, well, how can I afford it? Like, that's when I feel like I can then take action. We get so inside of our heads on fire grounds, on calls in general, where I just wish I had a little more information. If I just had a little bit more information, then I could act. It's like, no, at some point you just have to go. You just have to go and get away from that analysis paralysis. And Derek Sivers says, if more information was all it took to be successful, everybody would be millionaires with six-pack abs. It's like, no, you have enough information. You have all the resources available to you in the world. At some point, you just have to get out there and take action. I love that. That's what I'm hearing the most. Now, short-term rentals instead of long-term rentals. What is appealing to you? What is attractive to you about the short-term rental market that really, kind of piqued your interest there?
So I think there were two reasons why we wanted a property. One was to enjoy it ourselves, and two, to make money. And so, I don't know which was more of the priority, I would say, but we've really evened it out where we as a family can create those memories and enjoy probably about 6 weeks a year in total up there at the cabin ourselves. So that is just huge. It's creating vacations that would normally be so expensive, but the earning potential has become so massive, more than we ever thought. We're not afraid to share numbers. So I think we were told maybe it would make about $35,000 a year in revenue. Going into year 3, we're at $50,000. And that's with COVID. So that's 2 months we had to completely shut down. Once it completely reopens and word gets out and more people are traveling, it just will go up from there. So, we really didn't think it would be this successful. And we just love that we get both sides. And we just did not want to deal with the hassle of being a landlord and all the little issues. It's nice that somebody comes for 2-3 nights. There might be a problem, we can fix it, and they're out and they're done and they had a great experience. We don't want to really be those hand holders for a year, a 2 year, and not enjoy the property yourself.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's a lifestyle investment where you guys can participate in the upside of the extra income, but then also go up there and enjoy it and create those memories like you're talking about. I hear that a lot with people that are interested in the short-term rentals, and it makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, when you are investing in short-term rentals, you're buying another job, and if you can also enjoy that yourselves, you just knocking it out of the park. And one thing for people listening that a benefit of having renting a short-term rental from somebody that also enjoys the property themselves is it's not going to be junk that's in the units or in the house or whatever. It's going to be nice stuff because the owners themselves are also enjoying it.
And I've always wanted to own a bed and breakfast. I mean, that was just kind of my vision, but to have strangers in your home and staying in your home wasn't quite aligning with having a family and children. So this was a really nice workaround for me to be able to give people what they enjoy most, and that's a vacation. I mean, give them pleasure, have fun, and create that experience for them. So I think it's just so nice to be able to do that. And we also do leverage one thing, it's called home exchange. So even though if we're not traveling to our cabin and it's not getting rented for money, we'll swap it for points. So we've traveled to Bali and we plan to hit up Europe when it's safe. And so we're able to do free exchanges and utilize points to travel around the world or in the United States. So that's been a huge benefit as well.
Home exchange. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so it's just like that movie with Drew Barrymore and the blonde actress. Oh gosh, we're so bad with names, but they just swap homes. So same concept where you can stay in somebody's primary home or their secondary, either at the same time, or if it's not the same time, you get points. So there's no exchange of money. It's just they'll come stay at our place for about 200 points a night, and then we can use those points and go stay in Holland. And it's just a way to stay for free around the world, and amazing homes. I mean, absolutely amazing properties that we've stayed at.
I think another thing for those short-term owners, rental owners that are thinking about home exchange, for us, it was the icing on the cake before the big push that COVID's created. That's been the icing on the icing. But the home exchange, you get into nicer homes than you would ever rent or short-term rental yourself. And you also get, when people who stay in your house are higher caliber, because it's a home exchange. It's not some people coming and using your place. So we have yet to have a home exchanger that has done anything negative to the house. If anything, they leave it better than they found it.
So cool. That's really interesting. I'll link to that home exchange in the show notes. But I want to hear more about your property up in Big Bear. How did you find it? How did you finance it? You mentioned how it's been going through COVID, but then also, where do you see it going, and what does the future hold?
Let me start with this one. So this is the fire, maybe aim portion. So I spoke with Alex Kane, and he showed me just the nuts and bolts. I mean, we could have went for weeks getting more and more information like we have over the last 3 years. But as soon as he gave me enough information to pull the trigger, I called Rachel and said, hey, listen, we're doing it. Doing what? We're getting a place in Big Bear. So at the time she was working and she was out of town the next several weekends in a row. And I was working a light duty assignment. So I was Monday through Friday. And I said, okay, we're not going to have time to do this together. So why don't you go online, find 20 places that you like. Next weekend, I'll go drive them all. I'll grab the kids, I'll drive them. And if I like any of them, I'll electronically, show you those ones. And then the following weekend, I'll go get a realtor and I'll go get inside of them. And if I like any of those, I'll put an offer in on something. So the third weekend, we had an offer in, and she didn't see the place, although she's the one who found it.
I said, this is the one. Let's be very clear. I said, this is the one. You don't need to look at any others. This is it. But I want to look at 18 others. But yeah.
So third weekend to this process, we were in escrow, and she didn't see it until we were about 2 weeks into escrow. And she finally got eyes on it, and we closed escrow, and that was our first short-term rental.
My parents came with us, and they're like, what are you thinking? This needs so much work. And I think that is just a huge part of it, given that Rich is super handy. It was really the one way we made it work. It would have cost way too much for us to redo the place, but it needed work. And he did it again.
Thank
Looks
you.
amazing. Welcome.
Nice job, you guys. Wow, I love hearing the trust factor, but I also love hearing the teamwork and the fact that you found a place that needed fixing up. That's how we can force appreciation in any of the properties that we buy. If you already buy a property that has absolutely everything done, well, you're buying that at the top of the market. But if you find a place that maybe needs a facelift, or it needs some things that you could even do yourself, well, you're forcing all that appreciation. You're increasing the value of the home. And so you've already made money on the way in, which is just fantastic. And if you somewhere down the line, you decide to sell it, or you decide to cash out and refinance and do it again, well, you've increased the equity in that home just by doing that stuff. That's just a great way of doing things. And then so earlier you mentioned you refinanced, pulled money out to go purchase that. And then was it just a, normal financing up there, or are there different rules for short-term rentals versus just like a primary residence?
So yes and no. So the primary residence, a second home cannot be within 60 miles of your primary home. No, the opposite. The opposite. Now I'm confusing myself. Anyways, the point of what I'm trying to get at is if you're trying to purchase a second home and the lender looks at it and goes, that's not a second home, that's going to be a rental, then you're going to have to put 25% down. And then your third and fourth and fifth, they can't be second homes. They're going to be some sort of investment property, at least for us. Maybe if big ballers, they could figure out a way to do it. I don't know. But basically, we just did conventional lending, and we put 20% down because it was a second home. And then after we closed and it was all said and done, the next day we decided we wanted to turn it into a rental. So that's how we navigated that. Now we have pulled money out for a second time, and we're going to parlay it again. And the second vacation rental we purchase is going to be a vacation rental, and we'll have to put 25% down on that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it is a little bit different, but it's still accessible to regular folks like us that can do these things. Now for us here in Southern California, it might be a little bit easier because of how much equity that are in a lot of these houses. We've seen the prices of houses around here absolutely explode since the Great Recession back in 2009, 2010. So pulling money out might be a little bit easier, but even with that said, it's doable for regular folks. Now, kind of looking ahead, what is one resource you guys turn to, whether it's something to find, help you find tenants, or if it's something to help you network in the short-term rental arena? What's one resource you could offer us that?
I'm going to answer that, but we worked with or spoke with the Kennedys quite a bit. And so I would just say that they are way more technical in answering that question than we are. We just kind of figured it out. She'll tell you what that looks like. But again, we just did it. We just jumped in, got time in this market instead of trying to time it and figure out the right answers. And kind of like what Rachel said earlier with my sweat equity into the house, it's her sweat equity into what we're doing that's creating the volume of repeat customers and the volume of consistent customers. If it weren't for Rachel and her intuitive drive to want to manage her own personal bed and breakfast and taking that mindset into a short-term rental, we would not be as successful as we are. So I think it's what we have is because it's ours and it's what we're putting into it. But to answer the question,
yeah, I think it's all about referrals. The most way to make it a success is having people right there. We're 2 hours away. So it's your team that you have locally. It's your handyman, snowplow, your cleaning lady. Those are the people you rely on, because if they can't be in your property within a few hours, then it can go bad real fast. So we did not have the best cleaning lady at first, and we got knocked down for reviews. So it's talking to other friends who had really good ones, and then just basically using who they're using, and Facebook groups. That's the biggest resource for me. Is there's just a Big Bear group for owners, and you can just pose questions and everyone's really honest. And even dealing with Airbnb, I mean, they're not the easiest platform to deal with. So how to just manage that. So I think, yeah, Facebook groups and just friends that have already done it.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that kind of ties in perfectly with what you guys were talking about earlier on about building relationships. You talked about it with your financial advisor, just building that relationship. But this is what this is all about. And you just hit it right on the head, Rachel, when you're talking about building a team. Anytime you're investing in real estate, you have to have a team in place. The specifics on who is going to be the most important, it differs a little bit in the short-term market versus the long-term market. But building those relationships so you have the right team in place to help manage this asset, right, is the key. And that's just perfect. The Kennedys, they mentioned a site called AirDNA in terms of a resource for folks that are listening to this. You can check out AirDNA, and that helps you track a little bit of the data that is needed to figure out if this is going to be a viable investment or not. So check that out too. And then looking back, guys, what would be a piece of advice you could give folks that are either interested in short-term rentals or interested in getting down the path towards financial independence?
So when we started this, so it's worked out for us. What if it didn't, right? That's the big fear people have. And so at some point you do have to pull the trigger, or you don't have to. We could have not pulled the trigger and we would have still been financially secure because we would have been debt free when I retired. We just wouldn't have leveraged into a future that we're hoping to leverage into. So for us, a safety net, a fallback. What were we going to do if this whole thing just didn't work out for us? So let me move forward, and then I'll answer the question. Is we do have a plan, and first our plan was let's get into the short-term rental and see what it looks like. Once we started gaining more information, our 10-year plan is we would like to have 5 short-term rentals, 2 in the same community that we're in right now, and then the next 3 across the nation somewhere. And we want them in places that we would go. Because when we retire, our plan is these 5 rentals are going to be a legacy for our kids. And we're going to sell Temecula. Our plan would be to sell Temecula, purchase a home wherever my daughter goes to school, and let her roommates pay for the mortgage and her tuition. Then when my son goes to school, we'll figure out where we'll find the equity to do the same thing for him. And we're going to get in the trailer and travel the country and just travel. And we're going to utilize our 5 Airbnbs to stay in. And we're going to utilize the trailer to camp in, and we'll utilize the home exchange points. And we've done the math. We're looking at approximately 4, maybe 5 years of living cost-free for as far as mortgage goes, utilizing the leverage that we've gotten out of this. So now what happens if COVID 2 hits, and this time they shut everything down and nothing is renting? We can't afford 6 mortgages and sending 2 kids to college. So what our fallback was if everything went to hell in a handbasket, we could afford Temecula, and it'd be tight, but we could afford Big Bear. And so what different of a place would we be in output wise if everything went sideways than if we didn't do anything at all? And so we figured, well, we'd have bad credit if we had to foreclose or go bankrupt and we lost 4 of the 5 rentals. And we could keep Big Bear as our initial and vacation home and still have a legacy. So for us, the financial risk was worth the gain, and we were able to have a fallback without losing our pants. And so that was the trigger for me, was how can you move forward? And for us, it was going back into that 30-year, pulling the equity out, sitting on it, now looking at those doors that you never knew were there, and as they start opening, make a somewhat informed decision as to which direction you want to go. But we had a fallback. If we didn't have that fallback, if we couldn't have afforded Big Bear, then I don't know that we would have went into short-term rentals. We may have invested that money somewhere else.
But one thing with that is we knew in Big Bear, I mean, there are a ton of residents, and that whole market is flooded with short-term rental properties. There's not a lot of places to rent long-term. So that was a fallback. If we absolutely had to and sacrifice ourselves being able to vacation up there, we would be fine turning into a 1-2 year lease, because we know there is a need for residents up there for that.
Yeah, no, for sure, guys. There's so much to unpack there, and it's just so cool because you're starting with the end in mind. You have a clear vision of what you want this to look like. You're not just lucking into any of this stuff. You're putting the work in ahead of time so that in 5 or 10 years, when the kids are off to school, you have that plan in place. It's perfect. And then the part about buying a property in the town where your children go to school, and then have them get some roommates and help pay down the mortgage. That's a really good workaround, instead of a 529, where you're still you're still buying qualified educational expenses. I mean, your kids are going to need a place to stay, but you're just doing it really smartly, and not getting really locked into the parameters of the 529. But then what I'm hearing a lot too is like a risk assessment, and that is like really fundamental to our line of work, right, Rich? Is you're constantly seeing where are we exposed, where can we get hurt here, and with that in mind, we have like if we're going to go use the RPM system, if we're going to try to rescue somebody that's fallen down a cliff, or a window washer or something. Not only are we going to have the main line that's rated at thousands of pounds, but we're also going to have a backup line that's also rated at thousands of pounds. And the reason for that is we're constantly what ifing. What if the main line breaks? Well, we better have a backup line in case. Otherwise, this is not going to end well. What if our primary attack line, the pump can't go into pump? Well, we better have another pump at scene that can pull a backup line. So we're always having all these contingencies. And the same thing applies to the investing world. And it sounds to me, guys, like you're absolutely just knocking this out of the park. And so, yeah, I think with that, you guys got knocked down your first alarm.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, hey, if anybody's looking to learn more about you guys, or even possibly looking at renting your property up there in Big Bear, where could they find you?
So they can just email me, rachelkvhill@yahoo.com. And same goes for my full-time work. If anyone does have their own Airbnb or VRBO and you want products in it, that's what I do. And I'll hook them up with that as well.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll link to that in the show notes. Guys, I'll link to all the things that you mentioned in the show notes as well. I just want to say thank you for your time today. Thank you for all that you've shared. It has just been, you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and that's evident. And I'm just looking forward to continue to watch you guys' progress.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the vehicle to get this information out to everyone else.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, guys.
Have a good
All right. Hey, thanks again to Rachel and Rich for meeting me here in the bullpen, man. If you want to hear a story about how to start with the end in mind and then execute on that plan, listen back to what the Vigils just said. Their information was just awesome. If you'd like to learn more about them, you can find them on their email at rachelkvhill@yahoo.com. That's Rachel K. Vigil, Vigil @yahoo.com. If you'd like to learn more about us, we're on Facebook at The FIREhouse. That's f.i.r.ehouse. On Instagram, the _fire_house. On LinkedIn, The FIREhouse Investors, or any place you listen to podcasts. If you learned something today and you'd like to hear more, please like, share, and subscribe. But no matter what you do, take this information, go out there, and get some. Stay chef.